If you guys participate, probably if you've ever had a contact with the FBI, they've probably come to interview you, right? I mean, maybe you've been contacted by the FBI, and now's your chance. You can talk to me. You can ask questions. You will not ask a question I haven't heard before. I promise you. I've been beaten up by some of the best people in the country, and I enjoy that. I enjoy the negative, and the Bureau has good things about it, and has some things that people aren't too happy about, some things I'm not too happy about that we did. And I don't have any problem talking about them. I wrote about them in the book, and I'm very candid about the things we were successful in and the things we weren't. And I tell you why I think we weren't successful. And we have some things that we would wish had never occurred, like things that happened on April 19th. I'll tell you a little bit about how the book got started. My wife happens to be my very best friend. She encouraged me to write this book. And she'd heard the stories about the FBI agents before, and certainly the HRT operators, who you'll get to know in the book if you borrow the book or whatever. And she thought that nobody had ever captured what agents are all about. They all think we're these automatons like you see us in the movies. You ever see the Bruce Willis movies? You ever see what he does to us? Oh, my God. We look horrible in those movies. I gave a speech one time out in Portland, Oregon, where I was a commander, and one of the guys in the back of the room raised his hand and said, "Boy, Bruce Willis really makes you guys look stupid." I said, "You're right. And when your daughter gets kidnapped, call Bruce, don't call me." And that sort of puts things in focus. But we're used to that, and part of the problem I think the Bureau has is this mystique of secrecy, and we never tell our story. Nobody knows who we are or how we act or what type of people we are. I'll tell you a little bit about the book. How it starts, and then we can get into some of the things we cover. On April 18th, 1995, I was in Dallas, Texas, and my family just had arrived from Baltimore, Maryland. I'd been in Texas for about a year without my family, as happens sometimes when you're an FBI agent, and I was the commander of the division in Texas, Dallas. I had the top half of the state. And my wife came down on the 18th and brought her two daughters. I hadn't seen them really, I think, 3 times in a year. And I was really looking forward to seeing all of them, especially my wife. And we were having breakfast at some friend's house on the 19th. And we're watching TV, or listening to TV. And we hear that there had been an explosion in Oklahoma. And my wife gave me that look. And I said, "I'm sure it's just a gas main. It's probably nothing." And then pretty soon it said a bomb. And she said, looked at me and said, "Well, I guess I'll be building this house by myself," because that's when she was there. We were looking for a contractor. We bought some land. And I think we built a house every 2 years the whole time we were married. So I said, "No, it's not my territory. That's Bob Ricks' territory. He commands Oklahoma." And she said, "Right." And the bomb went off at 9:02, and at 9:15, my pager went off. It was the Strategic Information Operations Center in Washington, D.C., and it was the chief of the terrorism section. He said, "Did you hear?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You have to get to Oklahoma as quickly as possible." Now, I don't know what the weather was like here, but in Texas and Oklahoma, there was a terrible thunderstorm that lasted really 3 days. And I said, "I'll drive." And I went home, got rid of my clothes, or got my clothes, and called for one of my agents to bring a particular pistol that I like to carry, and because I had no idea where we were going or when I'd ever be home again. And I headed north from Dallas up I-35 and started heading to Oklahoma. Within 10, 15 minutes, I received a phone call from Rita Braver. Do you guys know Rita Braver, who she is? So I think she's with CBS. She's a nationally known correspondent, really good. Somehow she conned the FBI operator into connecting her to my car. And, I was shocked, and certainly didn't want to talk to a reporter. Nothing against you guys, obviously, but I just had other things to try to contend with. And she said, "Danny," she said, "I figure you were going to Oklahoma." I said, "That's right." She said, "Is this Middle Eastern terrorists?" And I said, "No, it's Bubba's." And she was shocked because we just had World Trade Center. And the reason, of course, in the back of my mind was April 19th. April 19th is a very important day to certain members of the far extreme radical right. It was one of the first battles of the Revolutionary War. The CSA compound, which is the biggest stroke of disaster for them, was taken down on April 19th. Of course, wake up. And she said to me, "Well, is that going to be the theory of your case?" I said, "No, Rita, that's the way you do cases. You guys develop theories and find the facts to support it, and if a theory doesn't work out, you come up with a new one." They said, "We'll find the facts and we'll develop the theory later." And I could be wrong. It was a WAG. You guys know what a WAG is? A WAG? Wild ass guess. We use it in the FBI all the time. So she said, okay, and we rung off, and I went on up. When I got to the scene there, it was an amazing sight. I've been to I don't know how many crises in my life. I've handled many crisis situations and been involved in the rescue of a couple hundred hostages. And I was familiar with crisis management. And there's one thing that always strikes me in a crisis situation is when you get to the crisis scene, there is a real electricity there. And you can't describe it. You can almost smell it in the air. It's almost like, you know how lightning smells in a thunderstorm? This is the way I always feel at the Atlanta Prison Riot, which I had the command of, and at this and other situations. It seems to be a mixture of the despair of the victims or the hostages, the tremendous energy of the subjects, if it's a hostage situation, and also the energy of who? The people who come to help. The agents, the police, the rescue people that come to help are completely energized, and you have this. You can feel it. You can just feel this buzz of energy going on, and there's a big problem with that. It helps you initially. When you first get there, everybody has all this energy. They can do unbelievable things. They can pick things up and move things. They can just go forever. But what happens then? They all run out of gas, and it generally happens at the same time. So I walked in the command post, and I saw Bob Ricks, who was the commander there, and he had things going. I mean, they were already going 100 miles an hour and doing things. And he said, look around, give me some ideas, tell me what we need to do. So I went around and checked with the various supervisors and saw that they really had things under control. I mean, I really didn't offer very much. But then I made a decision. He agreed with it, and it was not well received. I sent half of everybody, our people, home. 50%, every other person. Number off, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Twos go home. We'll call you tomorrow. Because if we didn't do that, what would happen? We'd have kept working. Obviously, to try to rescue the people there, which wasn't our job, but to try to collect the evidence consistent with their rescue attempts, it's going to take a lot of energy. We had a lot of leads. We had literally hundreds of leads in the first half hour of the case. So, and you know it's going to run 24 hours a day. It's the greatest mass murder in the history of the country. And so I sent half of them home, and they were really ticked because everybody wanted to help. It was like this giant calling to try to do something, to serve our country, and to also try to do something for the victims. But a long time ago, I outgrew the need for my subordinates to like me. That's one of the prices of being a commander. And you have to have the courage to make them uncomfortable, and sometimes they don't like you, but they don't pay me to make people like me at that level. I think generally they sort of do, but that's one of the curses of command. So I sent them home, and we started the business of going about trying to find Mr. McVeigh. And of course, we didn't know who he was at the time, but we knew there was a person out there. And I got this really crazy order from FBI headquarters. The laboratory division called down and gave an order that we could not collect any evidence. They wanted to wait till the lab technicians from FBI headquarters, which, as you probably know, is the seat of every bit of good information in the world. They are the smartest people in the world, although they've never seen a criminal, most of them, but they have all these great ideas and are super smart, much smarter than us. So they wanted to wait till the next day and fly down and for them to start collecting the evidence. And I'm not a very patient person, and if you'll see from the book, I am not patient at all. So I picked up the phone. I called a man named Thurman, who was one of the section chiefs. I said, are you crazy? I said, you know what it does here? We're having a thunderstorm, and all your evidence that's not really big will end up where? In the sewer. I said, I tell you what, we'll leave you the big stuff. We're taking the little stuff. So we started collecting, and we brought in evidence response teams from all over the country and started this process. And I want to tell you a story about a woman there that I think is a hero. We called our book No Heroes, but I want to tell you about this woman. I came from a world that was totally a testosterone world. Counterterrorism is a male deal. That's all there is to it. Like the NFL, there are no women in it. They've had women try out, and because of the rigors of doing it, the strength requirements, I mean, they're smarter than we are. They're tougher probably, but there's certain things they can't do, so it's all male. And I think you'll be surprised that there are a lot of stories in here about women in the FBI who make really a difference, and it's a different FBI than the one I joined. When I came in, it was J. Edgar Hoover. How many women do you think were in the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover? This many. And there were no minorities, and now the Bureau is the face of the Bureau's changed. But let me tell you about Monica. Monica is a woman who should have been a movie star. She's absolutely beautiful. She's the kind of woman that walks in the room and just looks. The FBI's gain was Hollywood's loss. She was assigned to my office in Fort Worth, Texas, and she was on the evidence recovery team, which is a unit of 15 agents that we send all over the country to gather evidence at crime scenes. They're really good. They're excellent. I couldn't do it. They're really good. They go to homicides and these horrible disasters. Monica also happened to be 7.5 months pregnant. And when the order came to go with her team, she ran home and started packing. And pretty soon her supervisor called her and said, "You're not going." And she pitched a fit. And let me tell you, agents don't pitch a fit to their supervisors in the FBI because we kill them for that. Not literally, but figuratively. They just don't do it. FBI is a very, very command and control based operation. Always has been, hopefully always will be. And she said, "I'm going." He said, "No, you're not. You're not going." Because, I mean, think about what we were walking into. We're walking into a building where a lot of people were killed and a lot of people would not be recovered for a long period of time, which creates a toxic waste situation. It becomes a terrible environmental hazard. And with probably maybe too much chivalry, he was going to try to look out after Monica. And she still pitched a fit. So doing what good FBI agents do, not wanting to make this woman mad and not knowing what to do, they call me in my car. And I'm driving along, and they're giving this scenario. And I said, I'm thinking, well, she's married to an FBI agent named Matt. I said, well, let's talk to Matt about it. And Jim Adams says, well, hell, he can't control her. He's got a gun. I said, well, okay. I thought about my own wife. I mean, we have 4 kids, and she's a really tough person, and she has all this energy and things. I said, oh, hell, let's bring her up. She's pregnant. She's not sick. And let's get her up here. But let's be careful what she does. Now, think about this. This woman, I mean, the most important thing in her life is what, her baby. But then she had a calling to go up there and try to serve, to help these people. And so she promised me, she said, I'll just do administrative work. I'll set out leads. I'll review teletypes. I'll just do administrative work. She lied. She lied to me. The first day she's on the pile, and she's grabbing evidence, and she reaches down, she picks up a picture, and it's a picture of a DEA agent and his family. She thinks, oh my God, this guy's probably under this pile. And she looks over her shoulder, and he was standing beside her digging too. And it was a great relief for her. I mean, there's a lot of emotion here. People just don't think. I know you guys had the trial and you heard a lot of it, but the really human stuff, it's really, and unless you were there, it's really hard to experience. On the second day, she exacerbated the situation. She went into the crater, pregnant, out to here, crawled down the crater, and she's sifting sand and dirt and gravel and all this stuff that was the debris from the bomb, trying to find evidence of what this bomb was made of. On the third day, she went to the morgue. And Monica and Kathy Lumley and another female agent, a couple of guys, started pulling pieces of the barrels out of the bodies of the victims. And there were pregnant women there, and there were babies. And I stopped her one night in the command post, and I pulled her aside and said, Sam, we have to talk. So, you okay? And she said, yeah, I'm okay. I said, well, how do you deal with the babies? She said, I deal with the babies okay. She said, but when I have to walk out is when there's a pregnant woman brought in. Because I think about how excited I am about my own baby and how Matt's excited about the baby, our first one. And I know that this husband will never see the baby or his wife again. That was really hard. She had to leave during that. That's the only time she ever walked out. But she didn't leave for long. She came back and finished. The people that we were serving reached out for us in very unusual ways. The agents that were in the morgue doing that, they brought in therapy monkeys. You know, the little organ grinder monkeys with little long curly tail. They brought them in from the play with. They had a beauty shop come in, and they set up a beauty shop for the women. I don't think the guys went. If they did, I'll have to talk to some of the guys about that. But they did all these wonderful things for us. Little Caesar's Pizza. Do y'all have that here? Is that a chain here? Little Caesar's Pizza set up a pizza oven in the parking lot and churned out pizzas 24 hours a day, and you couldn't pay for it. Walmart came in and set up this huge shopping center inside our fence command post, and think of everything you can buy in Walmart was there for us. If you ripped your boots or you ripped your gloves or your goggles got smashed or you needed chewing tobacco, and I don't advocate that, by the way. It's probably not politically correct to say that. Toothpaste, whatever. They gave it to you. You couldn't pay for it. You could not buy anything there. I went to Cracker Barrel one night. I'm going to plug Cracker Barrel. They were so good to us when we were there. I went there, and I was dirty and dusty, and I was hot and tired and mad. I went there with my partner, Jim Adams, and we ate dinner, and this woman came over, and I mean, I don't look like an FBI agent. I mean, I look like a tunnel rat. I'm not a typical FBI guy. She came over and said, you guys from the FBI? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, well, the manager says you can't spend money here. And they wouldn't give us a check, so that's against the law for us. So we had to open up the menu, find out what we paid, or should have paid, figure the tax, and leave it on the table for her for a tip. But the outpouring of support for us is something I'm sure you never heard about before. We even had women and their families bring food to our command post and bring us food 24 hours a day. We had laundromats show up, and they would come in and say, we know you guys are here and you don't have time to do laundry. Give us all your laundry, and we're going to do all your laundry for you, and we'll just get it back to you. That was a great idea. In my case, it wasn't that great of an idea, because shortly after we arrested Timothy McVeigh, they sent me across country to do the case on Michael Fortier and interview Michael. And guess what? My clothes never hardly caught up with me. My clothes are always like one transfer behind me or one jump behind me. And after weeks and weeks, I finally ended up back in Maryland on another terrorism case. And I got there and I came back and I finally had my clothes except for my underwear. It's very difficult when you've been on the road for a couple of months to explain to your wife why you've lost all your underwear. Somebody asked me at one of these things, what's the closest you've ever been to being shot? I said, well, a couple of times, but this may have been the closest. And I finally convinced her that there are FBI groupies out there and they'd steal her underwear. And that she didn't believe that, and it's not true. I'm trying to think where we want to jump to now. In the story, we basically get to here in the story, and then we leave. We leave Oklahoma, and we go back many years ago to a group of assassins that were preying on the people in New York City. They were called the Black Liberation Army, and they were I see you guys saying, The Black Liberation Army was a group of terrorists that had broken off from the Black Panther Party. They became the Cleaver faction of the Black Panther Party, and they wanted to establish a separate black state in the United States of America. And they thought by killing cops, they could cause an overreaction on the part of the government, and therefore the black people would rise up and we'd have a revolution, which is the tactic of every terrorist. That's what they all tried to do. That's what Tim McVeigh tried to do. And we go to that story. And that's every one of those guys. And there's a story I want to tell you about that, which I think is really the whole tenor of what the book's about. One of the Black Liberation Army terrorists was a man named Freddie Hilton. Hilton had been charged with murder of a policeman in Atlanta. He walked up and asked for directions. When the policeman turned his head, Freddie killed him. And that was his coming out party to be a member of the Black Liberation Army. He was a very young, smart, really smart kid, good-looking kid. And we got some leads on him. And there came a time when we thought we could ambush him in Brooklyn with a man named Twyman Ford Myers. Myers is the most vicious killer I've ever known in my entire life. And yeah.
When was this?
1972. You were, I think you were like 3 years old. I remember. So anyway, we set this ambush for Freddie. And we had a bunch of New York City cops and a bunch of agents, obviously. And I was a sniper at the time. And I'm inside of a building up 4 stories, and I've got my sniper rifle in case Mr. Hilton decides to go into his dance of death, which they were very good at. He showed up, and that made everybody really nervous because he was a cop killer. We had cops on the street. They were out working on doing street work. They were dressed like construction workers, and he was walking all around them. But we wanted Twyman the most, so we waited. And for about 10 minutes, I had the scope of my rifle, the reticle, on his heart the whole time. And I was pumped. I mean, I didn't want to shoot this guy, but you know, this is a tense situation, the things we trained to do. To make a long story short, Mr. Myers did not show up, and there was a diversion, and we were able to arrest him without any incident whatsoever. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way these cases are supposed to be resolved if we can. We interviewed him, and he wouldn't talk, obviously. And we put him in the back seat of our car, and Bob McCartney and Bill Baker and Jim Murphy and I transported him. And he's in the back seat, and he's really nervous because he's not sure what's going to happen. And he says, what's your name? I said, I'm Danny Colson, and Bill Baker said, I'm Bill Baker, and the other guys said who we are. He said, oh, I know you, you're Colson, yeah, I know about you, oh, you're Baker, I know about you. We know who you guys are, you know. We know who's chasing us. I said, well, if you knew who we are, why don't you call us? Just call us up. We don't have to go through all this stuff. And he's getting pretty pumped up. He thinks he's a tough kid. And he says, you don't understand. He said, we're at war. You're a soldier, I'm a soldier. We're at war. And we'll never surrender. I said, no, Freddie, let me tell you something. We're not at war. You may be at war with your government. Your government is not at war with you. Because if we were at war, you'd have a great big hole in your chest, because I watched you this morning through the scope of my rifle. That says a lot about what we try to do. We're not always successful at that. Sometimes we fail, and sometimes we succeed. And what you hear most about is when we fail. That seems to be the nature of what we do. And then in the story, we go on and do several terrorist cases. We do the Atlanta prison riot. I was a tactical commander at that and some other things. And then we come back to Oklahoma, and we wrap up the Oklahoma bombing. In the middle of our case, let me tell you something a little bit about Tim McVeigh. Would you like to hear a story about Tim McVeigh? I never read. I mean, I know a lot of authors do. I mean, I might call you up and ask you to read, but I don't ever do that. But I'll just tell you the story. When we went to Perry, Oklahoma, to get him out of local custody, that was a very tense thing. And let's go back to the emotion of it. I had just been in the nursery. I had walked around the nursery and seen the little bloody handprints on the wall where the kids were cut to ribbons, and you see the handprints streaked down to the ground. I'd seen Gerber baby bottles, the baby food bottles. You guys, how many have kids? You have children here? How many have ever used Gerber baby food? How thick are those bottles? I mean, I've got 4 kids. I've dropped 1,000 of them. I never broke one because they're so thick. Well, we found them smashed like eggshells against the wall, then been blown across the nursery. And that was hard for me because I had 4 kids that had all been in nursery school or whatever. So when you walk out of the oval, you know you want to catch these guys. I mean, we're very aggressive people, and we want to solve our cases. But this was like a passion. I mean, we had to find these guys. Anybody would murder babies, he needs to get caught. I mean, we got to catch him. But then all of a sudden, we find McVeigh in custody, and the on-scene commander says, "Danny, you got to go get him and keep him alive." Well, that's the way it should be. I mean, that's my job. I mean, I'd done dignitary protection, all kinds of tactical things my whole life, but the emotion of it was kind of stark, because here we are trying to find him. Then once you find him, that's our job to keep him alive. And it's the right thing to do, but I mean, do you want to throw his butt out of the helicopter? Yeah, you sure do, but you don't, because it's the wrong thing to do. And when we go up to Perry, and as we went out to the helicopter pad, a man named Dave Williams, who is the foremost bomb expert, I think, in the whole world. The Department of Justice has had a little problem with him, but they're generally wrong, and he's generally right. He will disarm any kind of bomb. You got a pipe bomb smoking, he'll take it apart. Nothing doesn't bother him. Scares me. I always get behind the car. But it doesn't bother him. He's absolutely, totally fearless. So we're standing out beside the helicopter while the crews are getting the thing ready to go. As a matter of fact, it's an HRT helicopter. And I noticed him stand over like this. He is really upset. He is just upset. And I asked him, I said, "What's the matter with him?" He said, "He is terrified of flying in a helicopter." And this is a man who will disarm a nuclear weapon for, but didn't want to get in a little helicopter. So I went over and I put my arm around him and said, "Dave, there is nothing to worry about. Almost half of all helicopter rides end without crashing." He said, "Thanks a lot." Then the crew chief comes out and he says, "Danny," or Doc as they call me in the Bureau, "Doc, we're ready to go, but we don't have time to put the doors on." So I said, "Okay, no problem for me." So we put Dave outboard on the port side of the helicopter, riding outside, just strapped in, and we took off for that flight to Perry. He was absolutely terrified. We loved it. I mean, the FBI agents are brutal to each other. If you have any weakness, you'll tell the pilot, moving around. He was scared to death, but he did it. And it's okay to be afraid. You just have to overcome your fear. We get to Perry and we get out of the cars, and an older man came up to me. It reminded me of my father. My father's an old cowboy. And he had a straw hat on and wad of tobacco. And he could have been a Colson. He comes up and said, "Are you boys from the FBI?" I said, "Yes, sir, we are." He said, "Well, if you have a problem with the evidence, just put that boy out the back gate and we'll deal with it for you." I said, "Thank you. I think our case is going to be pretty strong." But it gave me a clue that we needed to be pretty careful. We went inside and we started meeting with the sheriff and the prosecutor, and the state judge wanted to keep him because he had some kind of charge on him, a gun charge or something. And I'm getting pretty nervous because the longer we're there, the more his Confederates, if there are any, can start to launch an attack. Now, we've had FBI agents attacked with law rockets before. I've worked a couple of cases where terrorists have fired rockets at our building, and it's not unusual to have law rockets. When I first joined the FBI, guys had knives, now they have law rockets. But I really was concerned, and I asked the prosecutor, I said, "Please, get me to see the judge. We need to get out of here." And how many phone calls do you think I got from FBI headquarters? About a bazillion. My cell phone ran out of juice talking on the phone. "Have you got him yet? Have you got him yet? You got authorization to arrest him? Have you got him?" And they were the whole world is waiting for me to get custody of this guy. And so I went to see the judge, and I said, "Your Honor, I know you have charges, but I cannot guarantee his safety. I can't protect him in here. I mean, this is what I do, but I can't do my job here." And I said, "There's a good possibility that either a Confederate or an enemy will put a law rocket through the window of your courthouse. How quick do you think he signed that order getting him out of there? It's like, boom, we were gone. Now, we used a very, this is probably borders on being classified, what I'm going to tell you. And it deals with the vehicle that we used to transport Timothy McVeigh, the greatest mass murderer in the history of the United States. Now, you have to promise to keep it a secret. It was the sheriff's wife's minivan. Isn't that something? This thing had probably been to a bazillion soccer games. And, but I didn't have a car. I flew up in a helicopter. So I asked the sheriff, you got a car? And he said, yeah. So we had good security, but the minivan was the best thing we had. So we jumped in this van and we headed off towards the landing pad outside of town. We had all these escorts and state cops, and Jim Adams put up a really good plan to get us out of there. And these plans basically are dependent upon speed, and that's about all. We get out there, and Tim started to. Let me back up just a minute about Timmy, my friend Tim. When the agents brought him in to interview him, they asked him, "Do you know what this is about?" And he said, "Yeah, it's the thing in Oklahoma." And he was frightened. He reminded them about what happened to Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby. You all remember what happened there? And he asked us if we could land the helicopter on the roof of the courthouse and get him out of there, which tactically was an insane thing to do. It was stupid. But secondly, do you think I'm going to listen to him? I don't think so. And as he said this and we're discussing it, we're all struck with the same thought. I think those people in the Murat building would like to have had an opportunity to get out of the building before you blew it up. And now we have to keep him alive because that's the thing to do. So we get him to the little landing pad, a little teeny airport, and we pull up, and Tim starts he gets up. He starts to sit up, and I grab him and set him back down. And I said, "You will act like a gentleman on this ride, and we will treat you like one. If you don't, you'll be very sorry." I didn't want to have a wrestling match with this guy. And I certainly didn't want him trying to jump out. I mean, Janet would have killed me if he had killed himself in that leap. So we put him in the helicopter, and we strapped him down. And the helicopter pilot started climbing for altitude. FBI helicopter pilots are really good. They are great. They are right there with Task Force 160, and most of them are combat pilots, and they're excellent. And I had this, as I sat there, I'm thinking, this is the way it's supposed to be. This is what the FBI does best. A major investigation leads all over the United States. We follow the law. We follow the Constitution. The people in the country help us, and we catch a great mass murder. And I actually felt real good. I'm thinking, this is what I came in to do. This is why I joined the FBI. And the helicopter starts to climb. All of a sudden, the shudder, I mean, I can feel it to this day. A shudder went through me because I thought, his buddies could have a Stinger. I mean, that stuff is out there. Stingers and all kinds of guided missiles are available. And why? Because we gave them the Afghanistans. The Afghanistans sell them back to our criminals. So they're our Stingers. So I pulled out a sheet of paper, and I jot that this guy's buddies may have military ordnance. I don't want a Stinger up my ass. Take evasive action. By this time, we're pretty high. And I passed it to Jim Adams. Jim Adams gives it to the pilot who had flown the HRT when I commanded that unit. And these guys are crazy. All helicopter pilots are major crazy, especially the young ones. And he rolled that thing over like that and dove it at the deck. And about 6 feet, he pulls it up, and we fly all the way to Tinker Air Force Base, about 6 feet above the ground, jumping over fences, going around trees, around barns. Now, the media was smart. They were smart. They stayed up about 1,000 feet and watched us. And, of course, you can imagine what Dave Williams was doing. He wasn't liking this a bit. McVeigh didn't blink. He did not blink. He looked straight ahead. I sat right here. He sat a little bit in front of me, had agents facing him and one here. He never looked left, never looked right. He just looked straight ahead. It makes you wonder what was in his mind. I don't know. I'd like to know. I'd like to be able to open him up and say, but we can only guess, and I think maybe we can talk about that later. We got to Tinker, and we landed, and we were met by a very unusual contingency. It was an FBI SWAT team. Now remember, I said when I joined the FBI, it was all white guys. Okay, no minorities and women. The guy that took custody of him was an Indian named Chuck Choney, huge Indian guy from Oklahoma. All kinds of minorities there. Completely different FBI that I joined. He had the short, wide, stocky commander, me. My partner, Jim Adams, is a stocky, and I always say a very stocky biker. He's a Harley rider. That says nothing about his taste in bikes, but he's just a rough-looking guy. Tom Lind, a Chinese-American, picked me up, and the other guys took Tim. And I get in the car, and Tom had his load-bearing vest, his body armor. He had a ballistic helmet on and a machine gun across his chest. And he said, "Sir, get in the back seat." And on his headrest, he has a pair of chopsticks stuck in the headrest. And I say, when you think about how these cases go, you think it's all this serious stuff. And everybody's so, we are serious what we do. But there's so much levity on these things. It's like MASH, the movie MASH, all that humor you're taking to do in a guy's heart, and you're talking about, Hot Lips Houlihan or something. It's just a lot of joking around. So Tom turns to me and he said, "Sir, I am Oriental, and today I feel a little suicidal. I suggest you buckle up." And we took off on a ride that was much more dangerous than the helicopter ride. We were just screaming because, again, we want to try to avoid an ambush. And Jim Adams, being the delicate person, he says, "What the hell are these chopsticks for, Tom?" He said, "Well, I teach machine gun schools. That's one of my jobs. And when my students pass, I give them a set of chopsticks as motivation." I said, "I got a better idea. You tell them that when they fail, they have to ride in the backseat of your car. I think they'll be a lot more motivated." But this is the kind of things that the banter that goes back and forth on these types of situations. We're serious about what we do. We're very serious. But there's always that humor that nobody's ever captured before, and I know we capture it in this book. Because every day I get 2 or 3 books from FBI agents. They mail them to me and say, "Please sign them and send them back." Of course, they're so cheap, they don't send the postage, so it's costing me money to send these books. But they like the book, and it's really been fun. Do you remember what I said to Fred Hilton about you're not at war? You're at war with us, we're not at war with you. That next day, the FBI sent me to Kingman, Arizona to handle the case on Michael Fortier. And it's one of these things like, "Danny, where's your family?" I said, "Well, I think they're in Maryland." "Well, then they won't miss you." So on a plane, I'm heading to Kingman. I get out there, and we did a search warrant on Michael Fortier's house. And we took him, I called him to come out and come see me. And we met in a little trailer. It was a substation of the local sheriff's office. And it was myself and a guy named Bob Walsh, who commanded our division in Southern California, another middle-aged guy like me. And we pulled up 3 chairs on wheels, and we sat this close. Our knees were touching. And we basically kind of whispered to Michael. And he gave me all this philosophical BS that they spout about what their beliefs are, and we listened. And then he wanted to have a debate about the Constitution. And I'm a lawyer, and I passed the bar, and I was in legal counsel division. I think I know the Constitution. Plus, if you're a cop, you live it every day. You know what the Constitution's all about. And he said, he looked at me and said, "Some people think the Constitution's dead." I said, "Oh, it's not dead." I said, "Let me tell you about the Constitution. We just arrested Tim McVeigh under the Constitution, and we're going to indict him under the Constitution. We're going to try him under the Constitution, and we're going to handle his appeals under the Constitution. And one day, we're going to strap him to a gurney, and we're going to stick a needle in his arm. We're going to execute him under the Constitution. We're going to do the same thing to you." Just like that. Nobody screamed at him. Nobody yelled at him. It was just, here we are. There are 10,000 agents at that time. I told them we'll put all of them on it. We're going to find out everybody's involved, and then we're going to let the people decide. And they gave me the same argument. Some people say we're at war. I said, "Son, you may be at war with your government. Your government's not at war with you." After all, we were there with a search warrant. Hardly an act of war. And that's what this is all about. That's what this book is all about, is how do you deal with terrorists? And you think about it, and we've killed a lot of terrorists. Sometimes you're forced into it. I've been in the scene where people were killed in shootouts. Robert Matthews, the leader of the Order, was killed. I was there. HRT was not, we weren't deployed at the time, but I actually saw it. I've been around others where there's shootings. And always remember this about terrorism. When the government says we're going to have a war on terrorism, that's the wrong thing to say. It's not a war. What is terrorism? Terrorism is free speech coupled with violent crime. If you take away the violence, then it's just free speech, and we all have a right to say what we want to. It's not until individuals who have a different way of looking at the world engage in violent activity, or sometimes even a white-collar crime case if they want to crash your computer or something, but basically it's violence. So the way to deal with terrorism is to arrest them if you can, and let who decide? You. Let the jury decide. If the government kills a terrorist, as sometimes happens, then what do we create? Called a martyr. But if you arrest him and you put him in a trial, you bring him to Denver or wherever, and you let the people decide it's you. The government didn't decide Tim McVeigh's fate. They didn't decide Terry Nichols' fate, did they? No. We presented the case, but who decided? You guys. You guys decided. Then what do we create then if we try him? If we try him in for murder and we either convict him or we convict him of a lesser charge, what do we create then? It's called a criminal. And what do we think about criminals? We don't care about them. A good example, that's Robert Matthews, died in a firefight with the FBI, literally a firefight. He's a martyr to their cause. He went to live with Odin. He was an Odinist. You know what that is? Odin, the Norse god, Odin. They believe that stuff. So he's a martyr to their cause. A man who was probably more vicious, Bruce Carroll Pierce, was arrested by Leon Blakeney. Didn't hurt him. Leon's a character in the book. He and I did the Atlanta riot together. He arrested Bruce Carroll Pierce. Didn't fire a shot, although Bruce had 3 guns on him and was heavily armed and vowed never to be taken alive. But when a guy screws an MP5 into your throat, you rethink that position. We tried him, convicted him. He was the people convicted him. He was sentenced to 240 years in jail. And you don't even know his name, do you? Why? Because he's a criminal. And that's the way to deal with terrorism, in my view. I've seen it happen both ways. The best way to deal with it is by arresting them and putting them in jail. Now, I like to say about Tim McVeigh. Tim McVeigh gave a revolution, and nobody came. And that's what this is all about. If the government had acted inappropriately, then he might have succeeded. When I drove into our compound area in Oklahoma after this laborious trip, and the calls about Monica and everybody else was calling me, one thing struck me as I got out of the car. There were no roadblocks except to keep people out of our crime scene. We weren't stopping every car on the road. We had suspects we stopped and interviewed, but we didn't put up roadblocks and we had to interview everybody. We didn't go house to house and search every house in Oklahoma. We used search warrants to search residences and businesses. We got wiretap authority to put bugs and mics in. We used our criminal justice system. Do you think that would happen in other countries? You know what they do in Israel when they have something like that? They take a tank and they bulldoze the home of all the relatives of the people involved. That's not the way to do it. That looks like what we did at Waco. And that's the image that we are dealing with, and that's one of the problems that we're still dealing with today, is that at Waco, the people believed that we were acting like an army. I'm not in the army. I've trained with every military unit you can imagine. When I took command of the hostage rescue team, I trained with Delta. I went to this Navy SEAL school. I went to school in Europe with all the counterterrorist teams, GIGN, GSG-9. I can't even think of the name of the Spanish thing, GEO. SAS, too. I went to the SAS school. Went to all those schools. Most of them are military. GSG-9 is not, but the others are military or paramilitary. But I was trying to learn tactics and techniques. But the thing that divides us, and I had the Deputy Attorney General of the United States ask me, she'd seen us, and she said, what's the difference between you guys and Delta? I said, it's very simple. Delta is governed by the rules of warfare. We're governed by the Constitution. And when this gets blurred, we're in a lot of trouble. We lose the support of the American people. We lose face, and we look stupid. And the FBI only catches people. We only do our job if you cooperate. I was a fugitive hunter for almost 30 years. Oh, actually 31 years. And I caught 800 fugitives in my career. And people will say, oh my gosh, how do you find somebody like that? How do you track down a man in this country overseas? How do you catch him? I'll let you in a big secret. Somebody tells you where he is. It's that simple. Public cooperation. If the people don't cooperate with us, we can pack up and go home. And we really suffered in the last few years over what happened at Waco and what happened even at Ruby Ridge, which is another whole story. But people, just one second, I'll get to you because I'm about to wrap up. So anyway, that's the whole message. That's the message of the book. It's an adventure story. Lots of bad guys, lots of good guys, few shootouts, minimal. But basically it's a story about men and women who serve their country and about their families. Lots of stories about the kids in here, how the kids are affected by when you do your thing. When I married a girl who had 3 kids. I had one. We put these, that's difficult. Man, I mean, the Brady Bunch, that doesn't happen. I mean, they all hate each other, and they fought over the dog, and whose dog? It's my dog. No, it's my dog. We had to buy another dog. I mean, just all this stuff. But we got married, and then I left for a year. I was smart, right? The Bureau sent me away for a year. So how did that impact on our family? Dramatically. And we talk about this kind of stuff in the book. So it's not all cops and robbers. It's about kids. It's about family, and where I think we're going in the next century. And you have a question.
Yes. Hollywood.
Did you forget?
I hate to. Pardon me?
Did you forget?
No. I kind of wrote it down. Hollywood and the media tend to distort the FBI like they do a lot of agencies. And being the FBI's government, there's bureaucracy involved and systematic problems. But you mentioned about the Constitution the FBI tries to follow, but you have to admit when mistakes are made or bad judgment, like in the Atlanta bombing with Jewel, you know, that innocent person can get labeled, and it's a hard thing to escape. Ruby Ridge. Is the jurisdiction issue, I mean, is the FBI looking to be more cautious about that and not to be maybe so heavy-handed and admit to a mistake and try to be more open-minded?
Yeah, absolutely, and they should. I think the mark of an agency is not does it make mistakes, because we do. And I want you to think a minute, what is the standard for performance when we're brought into a very volatile crisis situation? Think about how you're graded at your job, and do you have a performance appraisal plan? I'm not asking you, just think about how do they grade me? The standard of performance for me in a crisis situation where people are pointing guns and rockets and there's emotion and hatred, the standard of performance is perfection. If we screw it up, then that's all we hear about. And that's okay with me. I volunteered to do that. I understand that. I know that guy may kill me or one of my people, or they would. I do something else now, but at the time. But I also understand there's another risk to it, and that is public opinion, in criminal investigations. I mean, I was investigated for over 2 years and exonerated after 2 years of horrible investigation. That's something we have to deal with. The answer to your question is we make mistakes with Jewel. That was a stupid mistake. It was stupid. We took the word of a profiler and focused on Richard Jewell, and the evidence didn't support us that much. The evidence was really weak. And I think we learned a big lesson from that. That was a major mistake. Now, these profilers are wonderful. I write about them in here. They saved my life once. They're wonderful, but they screw up. And the measure is, what do you do about it? Do you correct it? After Waco, we totally changed the way we manage a crisis situation. If I told you that our commanders, the guys who command our divisions in the field, that the FBI trained them more in how to deal with the media than they did with how to deal with a crisis, I swear to God, that's true. Not all of us. I mean, I spent my whole life being trained as a crisis commander. But most of them weren't. Gene Glenn had never been to crisis management. He didn't have a clue what was going on. Now that's all changed. They have special crisis management schools. We even train the Department of Justice attorneys, which, I mean, that's kind of an oxymoron that we could, they could never do it, and they don't want them to do it. But it's changed. It used to be that if a crisis happened in say, Denver, that the Denver commander was in charge. The director changed that. He picked his best commander. If he was in Alaska, he came and commanded this. That's what happened in Oklahoma. Bob Ricks, the commander of Oklahoma, wasn't the on-scene commander. They brought me, Weldon Kennedy, and 2 other commanders in to help. We didn't used to do that. That was stupid. At Waco, we had the HRT information and the negotiators' information going up like stovepipes. They went like that. They never went like that. So they never brought these two disciplines together. And an inexperienced commander that has the hostage rescue team here and the negotiators there, who do you think he's probably going to lean to? First of all, the HRT is like a giant machine. The guys are aggressive. They're smart. When they get in, man, they boom, boom, boom. Everything's set up. They've got communications. They can talk to the world. Their snipers are out, and all. And they're very impressive. They can completely take over from you. I mean, they'll seize the moment because their job is to be ready to go in and risk their lives like now when they hit the ground. And what are the hostage negotiators like? They stroll in, and they never look excited, and they get their little phone out. There's probably only 2 of them, and they reel it out, and they start a dialogue, and they're relaxed, and because what's their job? The job of a negotiator is to bring the tension down from here to here. And one thing to remember about a crisis is that when you have high emotion, logic is where? It's on the ground. There's none. So by their demeanor, they try to bring this emotion down, and time does that. So they're not in a hurry. The HRT guys are what? They're in a hurry. Because somebody may say, go in there and rescue those hostages. They got to be going. So you have all this energy here and this very relaxed thing here, so the commanders tend to listen to the tactical guys. And so that's one of the problems at Waco, that there was not a strong voice that supported the negotiators. Not strong enough, some people believe.
More.
Oh, absolutely. The whole way that's gone. Like, they used to have a meeting with the tactical guys and a meeting with the negotiators. Well, I never did that. I love negotiators because you know what? When negotiators do their job, nobody shoots Danny. I love those things. I mean, I love those guys. Some people didn't feel the same way. But now, the philosophy of the FBI is more like my philosophy was. I mean, God, talk them out. Then I can just sit here and, you know, do nothing. I mean, I jocked up, came here, got ready, suited up, and I got to go home. You know, because remember one thing about FBI agents, this comes as a shock to you. When we get shot, we don't come back to life. I know it's hard to believe in the day of video games. I don't let my kids play those things because they have all this violence. Oh, I'm dead. Psst, I'm ready to go. There are no restart buttons on cops, and there's no restart buttons on any of them. So life is very precious, and that's the reason for the motto of the HRT, to save lives. That's our job, try to keep people alive. I think it's a lot better. We made mistakes there. We made mistakes at Ruby Ridge. And that's what you're going to hear about, because people don't care about the good things. Let's do her. She's cute.
I have a million questions, so you're going to have to shut me up.
No, I'll just give you the book. I'll sell it this way.
Okay, well, first off, you just said something, this is personal, you just said you do not let your kids watch video or play with video games.
No, we never had a Nintendo in our house.
Okay, because of violence.
No, it's not just that. I think they become idiots.
Okay.
That's primarily it. I mean, I live in a violent world. I mean, my kids shoot. They all shoot guns. One of them was trained to shoot at the FBI Academy. He can shoot a gun better than most agents. It's not that. It's the idea that just violence for the sake of violence. And I mean, I don't say they can't go see a John Wayne movie or something like that. But I just have a real problem with those games and kids who. And I make my kids lift weights, run. They all play sports. They're very athletic kids. And I think a lot of it because we never had Nintendo. But if you have Nintendo, that's great. It's just not for me.
I don't like it. Okay, on some of the personal questions, loose lips sink ships. Do you have to take, say you're never going to outdrink alcohol when you take on with the FBI? Do they allow you?
No.
I mean, it's just,
No, you do. I mean, most guys in the FBI are Irish. You think we're going to fake a pledge like that, for Christ's sake?
Well, I mean, I know everybody was going to sneak it, but I just wanted
No,
to,
no, but you do have to sign a secrecy agreement. I mean, I have secrets. I mean, secrets that would spin your head
I've
around.
had people tell me things.
at bars,
Yeah.
you know, because they were drinking, and I've
Yeah.
had
You know what?
all kinds of stuff
You
told
know
me.
what that was? That was that guy who said he was an FBI agent because he thought you were cute. He was impersonating you.
Okay. Now, when you can't tell your wife what you're doing in certain situations like that, do you have, or your best friend, whatever, do you have a time limit on that? Are there certain things you're never going to be able to tell till
Sure.
you die?
There are secrets that things we did, and things that I was involved in as either a commander or an agent or an administrator that I can never tell the rest of my life. The secret will never be told.
But
And-
do you have other things that, like, for instance, you leave for 2 months and your wife doesn't know what the hell you're up to. Do you,
Before I
like,
came home, we told,
when it
because
came-
it generally was
when
public
it's
knowledge.
over, are
Yeah.
you like a certain time frame?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. I mean, I can remember many times walking on the runway at Andrews Air Force Base, trying to catch up with the C-130. The ramp is still down, so you can still run up into it. I'm talking on my cell phone. I said, I'm going to be a little late for dinner. She says, how long? I said, about a month.
Yeah.
That's that kind of stuff. But they get used to it. I mean, you have to marry a special kind of
I
person.
just wondered if there was like a time, you know.
Sometimes,
like
yeah.
on, and,
We deployed to Puerto Rico, for example, one time to do some Cuban terrorists who had, again, fired a rocket at our people. And I didn't tell her. I said, I'm going. I'm going to get a suntan. I'll see you.
Yeah. Okay, do you guys use remote viewing?
Mhm.
Okay, can you, I've like a lot of different subjects, and any of them that you could expand on or anything?
Sure.
Remote viewing?
Let me tell you about Night Stalker, okay? And we talk about it in the book big time. When we were doing a compound down in Arkansas, it was a Christian identity compound. It was run by a man named Jim Ellison and a man named Kerry Noble and a guy named Richard Wayne Snell. I won't go into Christian identity. It's kind of a perverted type of Christianity that's based on racism. I got a call that the HRT was going to be deployed to arrest Jim Ellison. He had law rockets, claymore mines, machine guns, a tank, night vision gear, great communications. They had a shooting range that was as good as the FBI's. These guys were really good. They were living in a fortress on the shores of Bull Shoals Lake, and they said, and you're going to take him out. I said, oh, man, impossible mission. The commander of the criminal division sent down an airplane to help me called Night Stalker, which I didn't know anything about at the time. And Night Stalker could orbit up about 5,000 feet at night. You can't hear it. And it has a thermal imager on it. And through that device and some other thermal image devices we had, we could actually patrol into their compound at night and patrol around their patrols, because they patrol looking for us. And Night Stalker, which incidentally was run by a woman, she was my link to the ground, and her name was Grits. And she would say, at 12 o'clock, you've got 2 guys on a patrol. And so we'd go We'd go to 9 o'clock and then go 12 o'clock. And so, and we talk about that. That's not classified anymore. We talk about it. The book, the FBI approved this book. They didn't like everything in it, but they approved it. It took me 2 years to get it approved. But there's a lot of things. We talk about a lot of the stuff in the book. But there's there's Star Wars out there. Can't tell you if I have to kill you.
What is the, it's kind of a twofold question. What is the likelihood of increased terrorist activity from foreign agents and influences in this country, and what is the FBI and our government doing to protect us?
Okay. We have two forms of terrorism: international, which is the type that blew up the World Trade Center, and domestic. We seem to grow more of our own than come from overseas. Right now, I know if I was a commander of a division in the FBI, what I would be concerned about were terrorists that were coming from Serbia. I wouldn't be concerned so much. I wouldn't be concerned about the Serbians who live here. And what I would be doing, which we did during the Gulf War, is go to the Serbian community and say, we need two things. You will not be the subject of any retaliation because of your nationality, because that's a violation of the law. We want you to know that you have recourse. If some Americans want to threaten you because you're of Serbian extraction or nationality, then we want you to know the FBI is here to help you. The other thing is if you're contacted by anybody in Serbia and ask you to do something, we don't know about it. Because terrorism is the tool of a weak government. And if they're going to start losing and getting in trouble, then they're not going to be able to shoot down our planes, likely. And so I think we're vulnerable to that. We're obviously vulnerable to Middle Eastern terrorists. We've proven that. The FBI, I think, we have a good handle on the international stuff. We have excellent coverages and informants and technical and stuff. I think we're pretty good at that. With the domestics, we have a problem because we have the free speech issue. And how do you balance free speech with intelligence? And it's really hard for us. And we've gotten in trouble for going the wrong way by investigating. One time we investigated a group of Quakers, for gosh sakes. That was really stupid. Got us in a lot of trouble, and we deserved it. But it's a balance. Do we have a handle? Yeah, I think we do. But can we guarantee it? No, we can't. I'll tell you straight up, we can't. But I think it's better to live in a free society with some risk than it is to live in an authoritarian society with less risk.
Well, I agree with that, but I mean, even the Serbian population that lives here that has been American, if I were watching CNN and seeing that kind of destruction in a relative called me, I wouldn't be happy with the American government.
No, but remember this. Being unhappy with the American government is a constitutionally protected activity. If I ask you in this room, how many, let's take a test, okay? Let's just take a test, all right? Okay, are you ready for your test? You have to pass this. If you don't pass it, you will be interviewed by Ken Starr. Now that's terrorism, okay? How many of you are unhappy with your government in any way? Okay, how many of you pay too much taxes? Do you pay too much taxes? Boy, I'll raise both hands. Okay, how many of you have a view one way or another about the abortion issue? One way or another, you care? Okay, how many of you believe in a literal interpretation of the Second Amendment, which is the right to keep and bear arms? Do you feel one way or another about that? Okay, all right. Congratulations, you have all just taken the first step necessary to be a domestic terrorist, because that's what they believe too. They would answer yes to the same questions. What's the difference?
Are terrorists in their personality similar to, or have a similar trait to, like serial killers that seem to have no emotion towards their victims, but are certainly extremely concerned about their own well-being?
Okay, the basic characteristic of a domestic terrorist is an inadequate personality. Tim McVeigh has it. Almost everybody I've ever dealt with in that group has it. They don't like themselves. They do not like who they are. I interviewed Tim McVeigh's father on the day after I arrested him, had him flown in from Denver. A really nice man. I had so much empathy for him, sitting there, and we're talking about his son, the greatest mass murderer in history. I mean, if it had been my son, I'd have gone there and got him. But can you imagine how he felt? He was very cooperative. He helped us. But frankly, I could have written a lot of the report before I ever talked to him, because he said Tim he didn't say he was inadequate, but he described him as being inadequate. Tim went to school every day but never did anything. He never did anything in school. He wasn't successful in school. He never participated in anything like the glee club, the band, the choir, the all the stuff that our kids do, sports. He never did that. He just went. He never had an association with a woman that we know of. No girlfriend that lasted more than, $20 worth. I mean, nothing that was meaningful. And that was him. He went. He did a pretty good job in the Army, but he couldn't sustain it. He went through special forces tryouts. Did you guys know that? You know how long he lasted? One day. I am an old man. I could get through at least 2. He pooped out. So he didn't like himself. He wasn't satisfied with who he was. And then he got caught up in this stuff with the Turner Diaries. Probably you've heard about the Turner Diaries, and sometime, I don't read it. It's not worth it. It's trash. It's horrible. But he got involved in that, and then he started developing hatred. And some people in the movement think he believed in Odin, and which is a very crazy, racist type of philosophy. And that's basically most of them like Eric Rudolph is a similar type of guy. So they're inadequate, they don't like themselves, they have to find somebody to hate, then they have to act out their hatred. And then if they develop a religious justification for it, then you got real problems, because then God's on their side, which is very helpful, if you think about it. I mean, having God on your side if you're a terrorist is wonderful, because, why? Gives you a religious reason to kill somebody. And basically it's minorities. Oh, FBI guys too. They don't like us. We're on the side of the minorities. How does that work? Danny O'Neill Coulson from Ireland is on the side of all the minorities. How does that work? Have any idea? You'd think I'd be on the other side, wouldn't you? No, I'm not, because they believe this is a Zionist-controlled government, and that the FBI guys that work for the government are called agents of Zog, Z-O-G. When we got into that stuff, we found out about, we all went out and bought hats that said Zog on them. So, anyway, that's kind of the way it works. And I'm not, the book talks about that in great detail of what they believe and why they believe it. Yes, sir, I think you were next.
The threats that SWAT teams and special reaction teams faced in 20, 25 years ago are different than they face now. And my question is HRT evolving to deal with the chemical, nuclear, and biological threat? Okay.
When I came into Bureau in 1966, we generally arrest guys with knives, sometimes revolvers, and it evolved to the point where law rockets, fully automatic weapons, laser designator, it's out there now. And the issue then becomes, how do we arrest an army? Because we have made a decision in our country to allow people to have their own armies here. CSA had it, David Koresh had it, they're still out there. You have a right to have an army. But then how do I deal with that? And that's an issue for us. How do you arrest an army? And we talk about how you should do it. First of all, you don't do it like the ATF and charge into it and get everybody killed. I mean, you do other things. But yeah, they're keeping up. They are keeping up with technology. And basically what makes the HRT better is that they train every day, they shoot every day, they have all these unbelievable marksmanship skills. I don't know if you know about the HRT or not, but when they do their training and they go into a shooting house environment, when they face a target, a mannequin or a paper target, there's a live human being standing right beside that target. So if I'm going to bust into a room and you're the target, there's a live man or woman standing beside them, because they shoot right past live people. I mean, they're unbelievable. Their marksmanship skills are incredible because they shoot every day. Their intelligence gathering capability is very good. So they always, you can get down to the same equipment, but then it gets down to who's the best agent or who's the best fighter. With regard to Chem Bio, we're not there. I tell you, we're not. We're not even close. That's a military deal. They're the only people that have the capabilities. You might be able to outfit one fireman or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. I don't think we're there. I don't think we're close. But one thing to remember about Chem Bio is that Chem Bio becomes more dangerous to the terrorists sometimes than it does to us. If you look at the sarin gas deal that went over in Japan, they had this whole laboratory, and they did all this stuff, all these smart guys, and only way they could disperse it was with a baggie with holes punched into it. So they've really had a hard time coming up with a delivery system for Chem Bio, anthrax, or any other stuff. And it sounds really horrible, and it is horrible, but it's so much easier to go out and make a fertilizer bomb. I could take this row right here, 3 ladies, me. I could have a fertilizer bomb tomorrow made that would take down the Moran building. It's easy. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but it's really easy. So I think the weapon of choice will be pipe bombs and fertilizer bombs if they get to it. Hopefully, the fact that the 2 biggest explosions in the country were solved within a week is a deterrent. And the fact that the American public turned against those people. If you blow up a building, we ain't going to follow you. I think that's a deterrent. I don't know if I answered your question. That's about as good as I can. Yes, sir.
Would you like to expand on your intelligence gathering?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the question was expand on how we gather intelligence. Through sources, through live sources, which I think are the very best, through electronic surveillances, We also have the capability to task NSA, the National Security Agency, to monitor everything that seems to move that they monitor overseas, all foreign traffic regarding to terrorism. I believe the very best thing we have is live sources, and the Bureau is the best in the world, I think, at developing live sources because you can control them better, and you really know what the meanings are. Like you can listen to a conversation, and you think you know what happened, but if you talk to the man that was in the conversation and said this is what we really meant, I think that's where our country really went. We went bad under Stansfield Turner when he was the director of CIA. He just got rid of all of our sources and wanted to rely on satellites and mics, and we didn't have a clue. So it's taken the CIA a long time to come back and use live sources again. No, are you scratching or are you asking a question?
Well, I was wondering when you said that you had a lot of leads with the Oklahoma City bomb.
I'm sorry, a lot of what?
Leads. Yeah. How do you know how far to take them, I guess? How do you know how valid?
Yeah, that's a real problem, especially with eyewitness identifications, because everybody wanted to help and everybody saw Tim McVeigh. And that became a real problem for us. So we had to verify the eyewitness accounts with things we could absolutely prove. I mean, there were people who had him all over the place, and we knew he wasn't there. So sorting through that stuff is really, it's a monumental task, and a lot of it's done, I mean, a lot of it you sort out by the computer system. We had full text retrieval in our computer systems that we could verify, like places like we knew. We had him on videotape at the McDonald's at the FBI building, right across from the FBI building in Oklahoma. We had a videotape of the truck being pulled up at a couple minutes toward 9. Things like that. So that's a really good question, and it's very, very difficult, especially when it's such a, that picture went out all over the world. My 22-year-old son looks like Tim McVeigh. He's tall, thin, has a burr haircut. I told him, God almighty, grow your hair out, or at least wear a cap. So that's a very difficult thing to do, and yes.
What's your opinion of the supposed man that was with Timothy McVeigh? Do you think
John Doe number 2. I really do believe that John Doe number 2 was there on the second day of the truck rental. We found him, interviewed him. He had the ball cap. He looked like the guy. I really believe that. Now, there are people in Oklahoma who believe that he was a Middle Eastern terrorist, and I don't believe that. First of all, you have to understand who Tim McVeigh was, and he didn't like Middle Eastern people because they're not of the Aryan race. So I don't believe that. I really do think it was, I think that the guy who rented the truck confused what day that guy came. I do. Could we be wrong about that? Yeah. Yeah. Let me. We have a couple of seconds, or how are we doing? Okay. Let me tell you about another plot to blow up the Murrah building. Did you know there were 2? Back in the 80s, remember I talked to you about Jim Ellison and Kerry Noble and Peter Wayne Snell? They were going to blow up the Murrah building. And they had a plot. They were going to use mortars, and they were going to blow it up with mortars. And a couple of things intervened. We put them in jail. Peter Wayne Snell was a vicious murderer. He robbed a pawn store and pawn shop, and he killed the clerk. Why do you think he killed him? He was Jewish. That's okay. It was justification because he was Jewish. He wasn't. Didn't make any difference. He also killed a black Arkansas State Trooper. During the course of the CSA siege, we used a man from Oklahoma, a place called Oklahoma City, to help us negotiate. I need to throw that in so you can put it in perspective. We put everybody in the CSA camp in prison. Okay. Peter Wayne Snell was executed. Remember, he planned to blow up the Murrah building. Peter Wayne Snell was executed on April 19th, 1995. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. Jim Ellison, who was a commander at CSA who planned to blow up the Murrah building, lives in Oklahoma City now with Robert Millar. Tim McVeigh made phone calls to Oklahoma City before the bombing. I get cold chills thinking about that. Is that a conspiracy? No. Is it a coincidence? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. The prosecutors that did the case say, absolutely, we got everybody, we're absolutely positive. I don't know. I'm just an FBI agent with 31 years of experience. I don't know. They're smarter than me. All lawyers are smarter than me. But that's a coincidence. I mean, and you can take this thing forever. Kerry Noble, who was the second in command at CSA, who was a friend of Peter Wayne Snell and those guys, he is absolutely convinced it came out of Oklahoma City. I'm not. I just don't know. By the way, last week, Kerry Noble was at my house drinking coffee on Sunday afternoon. He went to jail for 7 years, and we've become very close friends. Scares the daylights out of my kids every time he comes over, but he's a changed man. He now lectures for the FBI on what it's like to be chased by the HRT and that kind of stuff. He's really turned his life around. kind of interesting. He came to my house one night for a dinner party, and he said the blessing over dinner. And I said, that's really interesting. I remember about 10 years ago you were praying for me to die, and now you're praying over my food. It's kind of a funny twist of fate. Yes, sir.
You give quite a bit of time in your book here to another Denver personality, Alan Berg.
Yes, sir.
Speak about that a little bit, sir.
Alan Berg was, I mean, you probably know more about him than I do. He was a very controversial, in some regards, a Jewish talk show host who apparently was really smart. And from what I understand from our investigation, he used to just beat the daylights out of some of these guys who'd get on there and just ridicule them. And the order murdered him. They shot him as he came home one night, as I recall, with a bag of groceries. And Matthews and, Yarborough, and as I recall, Bruce Carroll Pierce executed him. Now think about these. These guys are Aryan warriors. And they walk up and they gun down a harmless Jewish talk show host who is armed with a bag of groceries. Now, I know warriors. I even know Dick Marcinko. They ain't warriors. And of course, they were all apprehended and they're all in jail for it. But that was a very vicious attack on a man who was exercising his First Amendment. Right.
Do you think that's solved? That case was solved rather rapidly, which was good. Then perhaps just a kudo your way. I'm very pleased that the Bureau let you put out a book like this soon. I think, and I would encourage others that have that type of an pro-American story to do that. And so you're to be commended.
Thank you.
That includes your supervisors and
Thank you.
The rest of that world.
Well, it was not without struggle. We did fight, and but in the end, I got a nice letter saying we approve your book. Congratulations, go for it. But thank you, I appreciate that.
We have time for one more question.
Yes, sir. You've already had yours. I'll talk to you afterwards.
Kind of a multi-part question. As a local cop, one of the things I see increasingly is the federalization of law enforcement.
Yeah.
And I won't blame Ruby Ridge on the FBI, Waco on the FBI, because that was an ATF debacle. But do you think some of the, for lack of a better word, the blunders the Bureau has suffered, where it's gotten a black eye, maybe those incidents would have been better handled by local law enforcement?
Absolutely, I think so. I think it's a big mistake to make every crime a federal crime. I think the FBI does good in certain areas. Where us and the DEA do great in drugs. And I'm not talking about the street level. My son's a cop, by the way. Never wants to be an FBI agent. He'd never be an FBI agent. He loves being a cop. I'm going to see him tomorrow. I can't wait. He's out in Portland. But I completely agree. We do deadbeat dads. You know what, the guys that skip out on their payments? Can you imagine? I mean, the way they train us, I got to go chase some deadbeat dads because they didn't pay child support. I think they should pay it, but I think that's a state deal.
Well, they're even talking about carjacking.
Yeah, carjacking became a federal crime because of the death of Pamela Basu in Maryland, which reached all this thing. We should do carjackings where it's a big organization, and we want to use the federal statutes on RICO and some of the other things, Hobbs Act, to get really heavy time. But we shouldn't do it by ourselves. We should do it in a task force. And where I like to see us work is in a violent crime task force where we have gangs. And some of these gangs are big, and they're very sophisticated. The way the FBI works best is putting local cops and FBI agents and let us finance a task force and let the agents and the cops pick out what we need to be doing and do it. And sometimes it's good and go in federal court, sometimes it's not. But I think we have to work as a team and get us out of these BS violations where we have absolutely nothing to do. And on Ruby Ridge, we should have never been on Ruby Ridge. I mean, Randy Weaver's crime, a man who was not a criminal, his crime was sawing off a shotgun a quarter inch too short. What kind of effect did that have on the crime problem in America? I don't care about sawed-off shotguns. But this whole thing on Ruby Ridge, all the things that happened to all of us, the aftermath, Lon Haruchi's deal, all that came over a shotgun that was a quarter inch too short. You're right, we shouldn't have been doing that. I mean, I frankly don't think there should be an ATF. I don't think they should be in existence. I'd like to take the ATF agents and bring them to work with us on drugs and violent crime and things that matter and not chase guns. I think, the way I look at it, and I've got great friends in the ATF. Bill Buford is a man I admire more than anybody in law enforcement, ATF agent in Arkansas. I'll tell him, you shouldn't be just chasing guns. Chase criminals that use the guns. Don't chase guns. Give them to us and let's get rid of them. That way I know we'll never have a Waco. Okay, thank you. You guys are a lot of fun. I appreciate it.